Hi, back again. Part 7, Recurve Tuning. Hi, this is ShihanHU, your archery coach and director of GROUP Archery Mission, as well as the director for the Coaches Committee, Archery Association of India. You are in Level 1 Recurve Bow Specialization Workshop of GROUP Archery Mission and the Archery Association of Tamil Nadu, TAAT. You have finished nearly 6 sections in recurve tuning, and you are now in the section number 7. In this section, you're going to learn about cushion plunger setting, clearance, troubleshooting arrow groups, adjusting the bow and arrow system. First, let's go down to the cushion plunger setting. You all know what a cushion plunger is. It's kept on the side on a small hole of the bow riser to adjust right and left settings. When correcting fishtailing using the bare shaft planing test, use the cushion plunger for fine adjustments only and not for large horizontal adjustments. It is important to first have good spine compatibility for the bow before using the cushion plunger to correct gross errors in spine. In the fine-tuning process, the cushion plunger's ability for improving grouping will become evident in the fine-tuning process. Also, it is important to note that when adjusting the cushion plunger tension, it will almost always affect knocking point height as well as dynamic spine. Don't be surprised if the bare shaft impacts change in height as well as horizontal impact. If during the tuning process you're unable to get the unflexed shafts to impact near the flexed shafts in the horizontal plane, it will most likely be necessary to change arrow sights. Your arrows might be too weak. The unflexed shaft impacts to the right of the flexed shaft for right-handed archers, or too stiff if the unflexed shaft impacts to the left of the flexed shaft for right-handed archers. If, after completing the test, the bare shaft impact is more than 3 inches, that is 8 centimeters to the right, it is weak, or left, stiff, of the fleshed arrows at 20 yards or about 18 meters. You will most likely need to change your shaft size. However, before going to this more costly investment, make sure you are not having a false tuning indicator caused by a clearance problem. Usually, incompatible arrow spine is the biggest cause of a clearance problem, but not always. Now let's go down to the clearance problems. To check for clearance, that is clearance of the arrow from the arrow rest, use dry powder foot spray. It is available in the archery dealers' shops. Dry deodorant spray from any shop or similar product applied to the last quarter of the arrow shaft, fletching, arrow rest assembly and sight window near the arrow rest. Do not disturb the powder sprayed on the arrow and bow while preparing to shoot. The arrow should be shot into a firm target so that it will not penetrate to the powder area. Then check the powder on the arrow to see if there are any marks indicating an impact between the arrow and the bow in any area, arrow rest or arrow window, anywhere. Now, correcting clearance problems. If you are not achieving good arrow clearance and the arrow fletching and bow make contact, optimum grouping cannot be achieved. By examining the areas where the dry powder spray is scraped off, the nature of any interference can be determined, and the position of the fletching as the arrow leaves the bow can be identified. If there is a clearance problem, this can usually be seen in the arrow flight to the target. A term used to explain the visual flight disturbance is called minnowing, like fishtailing or porpoising. Minnowing describes a specific arrow flight disturbance. Minnowing will appear to look much like fishtailing, except that the tail of the arrow appears to move from side to side more quickly, and the amount of side swing is usually much less than in fishtailing. In fishtailing, it moves like that. In minnowing, it moves like this. Minnowing indicates inadequate clearance and is caused by the rear portion of the arrow, usually the fletching, that is the veins contacting the arrow rest or the cushion plunger. Now, what can you do about it? The following procedures can help you correct clearance problems that cause minnowing. If the arrow fletching is hitting the arrow rest, try rotating your arrow knob 1/32 of a turn. Continue rotating the knob in 1/32 turn increments until clearance is achieved. Make sure your arrow rest support arm does not protrude past the outside of the arrow shaft when the arrow is resting on the support arm and is lying against the cushion plunger or the side loading device. Choose a lower profile fletching. Follow the procedures for tuning adjustments or knob indexing and arrow rest setup. Make sure the bow hand is well relaxed to eliminate bow torque. It's very, very important that you need to relax your bow hand. Move the cushion plunger slightly out from the bow to help increase clearance if the other tuning modifications have absolutely no effect. Now let's go down to troubleshooting arrow groups. Now you must have heard your archers or any shooters say, if your arrow groups well at 20 yards, they will group at any distance. If they group at 18 meters, they will group at any distance. Or if the arrows group at long distances, they will group at short distances. In some cases, neither statement is true. There may be a minute disturbance in the equipment that affects the equipment's potential for superior accuracy, causing poor arrow grouping. Now what follows here is information that will help you perform the fine-tuning adjustments necessary to eliminate most or all of the minute tuning problems. Many archers and shooters have experienced one or all of the following grouping or arrow flight combinations. Poor arrow flight and good grouping. The arrow goes well, but the grouping is bad. This is commonly the result of a stiff arrow, heavy arrow. The arrow yaws slightly as it leaves the bow, but usually recovers quickly and often produces very, very acceptable grouping. So heavier, more acceptable grouping. Good arrow flight and poor grouping. Although this seems contradictory, the phenomenon is somewhat common and relates to the tuning method used, to the lack of fine tuning. Having perfect arrow flight or having the bash shafts impact exactly with the fletch shafts using the bash shaft planing test does not, I repeat, does not always mean your arrows will group well. It only means that your arrows will fly well. Now, this section on fine-tuning will assist you in obtaining optimal grouping from your equipment as well as good arrow flight. It is best to work towards good arrow flight and good arrow grouping, as this will produce the most consistent results in any weather and especially in windy conditions. Arrow grouping patterns often reveal probable arrow flight problems. Two of the most common grouping indicators for determining arrow flight problems are as follows. 1. Excessive drag. If the arrow has too much drag, that is, the fletchings are too large or the fletch or offset too much offset, it can cause excessive drag and grouping will often suffer at long distance. For example, if shooting theta distances, earlier distances of 90, 70, 50 and 30 meters for men and 70, 60, 50 and 30 meters for women, archers may experience good grouping on all distances except for the longest distance. If this is the case, the arrow most likely has too much drag. Excessive drag will cause the arrow to become unstable due to the rapid decay of its forward velocity. When forward velocity drops too quickly, instability occurs. This unstable flight causes poor grouping at long distances and extreme vulnerability to wind drift. On lightweight arrows, it is very important to reduce drag to a minimum to maintain maximum downrange velocity. This can be done by reducing the size, height or length of the fletching, the vanes, or by reducing the angle of the fletching or both. Now let's go to the next section, insufficient clearance. A clearance problem will usually have the opposite effect of excessive drag. Most often, arrow grouping is acceptable at longer distances. However, the shorter distance groups are not reduced in size proportionately to those at the longer distances. This situation commonly results in short distance scores that are significantly less than what the longer distance scores would indicate. If this is a familiar scenario, look for a clearance problem or micro disturbance within the bow and arrow system. Now let's go to adjusting the bow and arrow system. If you are having problems tuning your bow, you certainly will have to make some modifications to your equipment, all your accessories to achieve better tune. Well, to achieve better tune, I'll be giving you some suggestions. Number 1, bow weight adjustment. Virtually all target quality recurve bows, all quality target recurve bows have an adjustable draw weight system. You can increase or decrease the bow weight. Bow weight adjustment should be the first tuning consideration if your arrow reaction is significantly stiff or weak. It is more important not to increase bow weight more than 1 or 2 pounds, as it could have a detrimental effect on shooting technique. You can't pull it. It's very difficult, or it could be injurious to you too. Here is a good guideline to follow if you can physically handle any increase in bow weight. Simply draw and hold your bow at full draw for 60 seconds. If you can hold the weight for an entire minute, like 50 seconds, I think you can handle the 1 or 2 pound increase. If the arrow reaction is too stiff when applying the bash shaft tuning test, increase the draw weight. If your arrow reaction is too weak, decrease the draw weight. Now let's move to bowstring, the string of your bow. Bowstring weight can have a significant effect on arrow spine. Increasing or decreasing the number of strands in the bowstring can influence the arrow's dynamic spine value enough to require a shaft size change of up to 1 full size weaker or stiffer. If your arrow reaction is too stiff, decrease the number of strands in your bowstring. Decrease the number of strands. If your arrow reaction is too weak, increase the number of strands. Serving weight, the center serving, can also produce the same effect. For example, monofilament center serving will cause the arrow to react stiffer. Okay, it will go to the left. Then lighter weight nylon center serving. Simply changing from a metal knocking point to a tie-on knocking point can have a noticeable effect on arrow spine as well as due to the weight difference between the two styles of knocking points. Now let's move to the next section, the point and insert weight. The arrow's dynamic spine can be tuned by using various point and or insert outside weight combinations. If your arrow is too weak, go to a lighter insert or a point. If your arrow is too stiff, try a heavier insert or point. Continue to change insert and or point weights within an acceptable balanced point range of about 10 to 18% of the FOC. Well, so much for this session. Catch you soon with the next part. Let's break up here. Since the lecture is loaded with information, it will not get into your head that easily. If it does, trust me, you must be a brilliant toxophilite. You must be a genius. Please listen to the lecture over and over again in your headphones. This will truly try to make you understand what I have been saying in all these sessions. Keep repeating till you are thorough with it. I will be explaining every part of this lecture in simple detail in several sessions all through the year with many, many more lectures in a language and a way you will clearly understand. Till you have completely grasped it, it sinks in your head and your heart. God bless you all. Catch you again soon. This is GROUP.